Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back. Our guest today is a good friend, the professor of chemistry at Cornell University, Dave Collum. Welcome back, Dave.
It's glad to be back. I've
Yeah,
probably done about 10 of these now, so
yeah, you've
this
done
is
it.
we're starting to rack them up.
Yeah, you've done a decent chunk, and it's every time it's a breath of fresh air having you on. So thank you so much for coming down. I wanted to first start off with all the craziness that's happening in the world, all of the corruption that's being uncovered, especially in the United States, and even gold and silver. But first, let's start off with tariffs. So many people, I'm in Canada, and a lot of people are talking about, is tariffs good? Is it bad? Is it good for the U.S. economy? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, we don't know what's a negotiating tool and what's an actual real tariff. And second of all, I think it's a legitimate question to ask, are we putting in tariffs that match tariffs that already exist on the other side against us?
Right.
And so if Canada has a 30% tariff on our goods and we don't have any, then to put a 30% on Canada strikes me as it might not be good news, but it doesn't strike me as totally half cocked either. So
Right.
um, I
And
don't
what
know.
and
It's hard to
and
say.
and what about all the corruption that you're seeing being uncovered by Doji and all that? Like, what are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, I'm worried it's not as they're not funding as much as the headlines. And so that, if you like all the Social Security numbers, we don't know how many checks were mailed out to dead people and stuff like that. I'd like to know. Um, the big issue for me at this point is so let's say we sent $2 billion to some LGBTQ organization in Afghanistan. We know they're not receiving it, right? That goes without saying.
Right.
Um, there are recipients that I can just sort of live with, like, some sort of CIA black ops budget, and I go, okay, that's life. You don't have to like it, but it doesn't shock me. Um, it could be to bribe some dictator somewhere, which we do too, and that again, so that's one of those. You can oppose it, but it's not shocking. If that money's making its way back into the hands of private citizens or the DNC or things like that, then I get upset. So I want to find out not just that we found the money and stopped it, but I want to know who made the call to give it away and who got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like, if it's given away to private citizens, and like that would be a massive concern.
That would bug the shit out of me.
Yeah. And what about like, now there's been so much talk, Dave, online about first Trump started tweeting or Trump started talking about it on his platform, but then Elon Musk started tweeting about, is there really gold at Fort Knox? What are your thoughts? Are they going to do an audit on it finally?
Well, so there's a silly component to it that's profoundly silly, and that is the idea that you open up Fort Knox the way you'd open up Al Capone's vault. And is there gold or is there not? I would be profoundly shocked if there was not gold. A proper audit would actually trace the ownership of the gold bars and check the serial numbers and things like that. And that's a much bigger task. So you can't just open the doors and bring in a news crew. That's absurdity.
Right.
Unless it's empty. If it's empty, but I don't think it is. I think the question is one of ownership.
Yeah, a lot of people online are talking about, oh, is that gold been leased? Or is it actually pure gold? Or is it, because I guess I had a couple of guests on in the past couple of weeks and they were saying last time they did the audit, many, many years back, they're saying it's not actual 100% gold or whatever it is. But what do you think would be the repercussions or the actual effect if, let's say, they do an audit and you don't have the actual gold there in Fort Knox, and then countries who are like, hey, we store our gold with you guys at Fort Knox, and they start demanding it, and then the U.S. doesn't have it. What do you think happens then?
Well, I think at a national level, if the math has been done right, I think it's something like $700 billion worth of gold,
Right.
and that's just peanuts compared. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's peanuts compared to our national debt and our unfunded liabilities. It's super peanuts. Um, on the other hand, if you are an owner of gold, an investor in gold, I could imagine the gold price going nuts.
Oh
Forget
yeah.
about whether the U.S. has wealth in gold or not, I don't know. But I could imagine if the gold's in poor shape or missing or being grabbed by China or whatever, that yeah, the gold market could respond quite aggressively.
Welcome to the Cayman Islands, a premier offshore jurisdiction where natural beauty meets financial stability. Here, your wealth is more than secure. It thrives in one of the most trusted and respected financial centers in the world. For over a decade, SWP has been the trusted choice for precious metal investors worldwide. Our purpose-built 6,000 square foot facility sets a new standard in precious metals storage. Beyond safeguarding your assets, we're committed to making a difference in our community by supporting local causes and events that reflect our values. As we continue to expand and innovate our services, we ensure that your wealth is safe and strategically positioned to shield you from the uncertainties that lie ahead. Strategic wealth preservation, trusted today and ready for tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
I think it's 40% of all the gold being bought this year alone. This year or the past 4 months, 40% of it has been bought by central banks. So it's clearly not just your average Joe investor buying up gold. You're seeing massive institutions buying up gold. So I guess do they see something we don't? Like like there's so much gold being moved in from out of the LBMA and moving into New York vaults. Like, what are your thoughts on all this?
well, I don't, it seems to be really vague to me because it appears as though, first of all, I don't know if it's going from LBMA east or west. And second of all, if it's going west over to COMEX, I don't know if it's going to COMEX to then send east. And
Right.
so COMEX could have commitments to Eastern buyers of gold that they somehow got to cover. And so the gold's going to go technically from London to COMEX, but then from COMEX to China or Russia, or whatever. As to why they're buying it up, well, that's our fault. We weaponized the dollar and
Yeah.
we weaponized the banking system, and so you've got a bunch of big countries saying we don't trust you anymore. And I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? If I were Russia, I were China, I wouldn't trust us, so I wouldn't be buying our treasuries. I wouldn't be depending on our banking system.
What's your biggest concern right now, Dave, in the world, whether it's geopolitical, economical? What is your biggest concern right now?
Um, What's my biggest concern? Well, the Middle East could always blow the hell up. That's always
Oh
a big
yeah.
concern. I think Ukraine is going to resolve very quickly, in part because that's what Trump wants, and so I think Putin will get what he wants. Trump will get what he wants, which is quick, and we'll cut some deal with Zelensky that will be beneficial to the United States, and may or may not cause Zelensky to be alive a year from now. Former allies of the United States who go out of favor don't have high life expectancy. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess right now a lot of people are talking about like what we were talking about earlier in the episode, all the corruption and if it could be into if the money's going into private citizens' hands. But Trump is also saying that he wants to take that money and possibly send $5,000 checks to every person in America from the money that he's uncovered. Do you think that's even viable? Do you think he will do it?
I don't know if he will do it, but it's not viable. I mean, if you do the math, it's something. It's substantially it's an order of magnitude at least more money
What
than
they've
we have
uncovered.
found.
Right.
Right. And on top of that, they talk about using some of it to pay down the debt. Well, you don't get to pay down the debt at all until you've gotten rid of the deficit. And the
Yeah.
deficit is something like 1.8 trillion a year. So we're so far from that reality. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's somehow if it's just a big ruse, meaning they're going to do it, but it's going to be as irresponsible of every other administration, or if it's just bullshit for the masses to hear, but they're never going to get it. I don't know, but I do not think a reasonable individual would be talking about giving $5,000 checks to every family based on what they've uncovered.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what is your my next question would be what is your biggest pros and cons about this current administration? What are the pros are you seeing and what are the biggest cons for you personally?
Well, the pros is that they're showing that you can do stuff that people didn't think you could do, right? So I think the genius of actually hiring a bunch of code heads who can actually track money, which I said, of course you can. Why didn't they? And the answer is because the whole system's corrupt.
Yeah.
So that might be a game changer. The other pro is that one of the things it did, it totally, the left has been a bunch of bullies for a dozen years now, where on, social issues and things like that. So you speak up against trannies and in elementary schools, and you were just pounded. And now all of a sudden there's just this rejection of all those ideas. And so the vibe shift is what someone called it. I think it's profound. So now you can speak up, and there's guys walking around with MAGA hats on and stuff like that. And so I think the left has been neutered,
Yeah.
and I think there's nothing that's off limits in terms of hammering them now. And so they're still pushing back against women and biological men in sports, but that's gone. I mean, there might be one or two more sporting events where biological men are going to compete against women, but that's going to be the end of it. And so stuff like that's a real win in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
I think the left really had played that card, overplayed that card profoundly.
Yeah.
So
What's your cons?
my con is that I worry that we're getting more headline stuff than reality. That's the first concern.
Right.
My second con is that Trump's reinventing the presidency profoundly. And I'm happy to see what he's doing for the most part. But imagine now the next president is some sort of way left of center president, and then they use these protocols. So imagine if Kamala Harris was writing 200 EOs in the first week.
Oh, it would be crazy.
I'd be on suicide watch, right? The crap that she'd write. And
Right.
but Trump has shown that you can just ignore the previous system and do it, and the courts are holding it up. I mean, the courts are letting it go through. They're ruling in his favor and things like that. And maybe because it's getting rid of corruption and grift and waste, maybe that's why the courts are supporting it. But it's a little scary in the hands of another person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see when it's like for good things they're passing, like male biological males playing in women's sports. But of course, you're absolutely right. If the next 4 years comes and if it's a far left and they start passing things like 200 things in one week, and it's just, yeah, you're right. It could really stir things up in a bad way.
It makes the presidency much. I would love to go back to an era where I care about as much about who wins the presidency as the Super Bowl. So I might say it's really a shame the Giants lost, but then I have dinner and forget about it, right? And right now these elections look pretty important.
Yeah, of course, especially in the next 4 years. I think it was the governor of Maine who Trump was talking to in one of their it was face to face, and she
Yeah,
said,
he pounded her.
yeah,
He pounded her.
he pounded her. He's like, oh, I think the governor of Maine wants to have biological males playing in women's sports, and she said, oh, we'll see you in court, and he's like, well, I'll cut your your funding.
And
So
then she said she'd see him in court, and then he said, "Oh, that's going to be an easy one. I'm going to win. And by the way, you're not going to get reelected, so you're going to have a short career, right?"
right,
The left profoundly underestimated Trump the whole way, and I think based on his first term where he was playing without a strong team because he didn't know he could trust, and then based on the fact that he lost to Biden in what I thought was a corrupt election. Um,
yeah,
and what they just didn't see the firepower that he would bring this time. And I actually like the model that says that this will be way more profoundly important, the fact that he lost and then came back,
yeah, absolutely.
than if he had won in 2020. If he had won in 2020, we would have had 4 more years of fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it was an actual strong comeback, and it was like purpose.
Yeah, right. It's like Muhammad Ali winning the title for the third time or something. Yeah.
Right. Now, I guess my question would be, and a lot of people online are talking about, like, why isn't certain lists like the Epstein list or certain things like that not been brought to the table? Trump said he would release the Epstein list, he would release the JFK files, which he did declassify them, but they haven't been fully released yet. But why aren't you seeing things like the Epstein list still not be released? Like what is going on there? In your
Well, there's a
thoughts?
couple interpretations. One is that he could have released it in the first 4 years. He didn't. He had there's stuff he didn't do then. He says he's going to do now. I don't know.
Right.
Um, One could argue that it's probably a sensitive enough topic that one could say that a well-reasoned individual would sort of get really ready to do it. And so the idea that Cash Patel and Bongino would just go in there and day one just pop it all open, that's probably reckless. So you can imagine looking through it and going, "Holy shit, we need to do this systematically and carefully."
Right.
Because there's a lot of potential collateral damage here, and it's not to say they're not going to do it, but now the other interpretation is this has all been bluff and we're not going to get it. Now I don't actually care about the JFK files that much. What would shock me is if they came out and it wasn't a conspiracy by the CIA. That,
Yeah,
that's what would
absolutely.
that's what would shock me, right? If
Yeah.
it
Hello, my fellow silver and gold stacker. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching the channel. Subscribe, please like the video, and also hit the notification bell. Keep stacking.
turns out it was Nixon who did it or something, I go, "Oh my God, I didn't see that coming." You know.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. Like a lot of people, the general consensus is the government supposedly already and the CIA got rid of
I'd
him.
like to see 9/11. I'd like to see about Vegas shootings and things like
Yeah,
that.
the Vegas one is a
January 6th, the
yeah.
pipe bomb, the how many agents were smashing windows at the White House, things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I think January 6th alone would produce fantastic fodder for the media, and I still think that was a dark chapter in American history, not the surge to the Capitol, but rather what they did to the people afterwards. I have friends who say, "Well, they shouldn't have gone in," and I go, "Well, so you're doing 35 and a 20, and the cop pulls you over, you get a ticket, and you lose your license for 10 years. How do you think that would sit with you?"
Yeah, well, you would be pissed off.
Right. And so you get a trespassing charge and then do, solitary confinement followed by 6 months in a high security prison getting it up the butt by some guy named Bruno, right? That's
Yeah,
just
it's
that.
complete persecution and complete overrule
But
of
I was worried he was going to cherry pick his way through and try to find the guys who were good and the guys who were not so good and I was glad he just did a swipe. Now, I think there's a couple complicated cases he's having trouble with, but I think that's just a technicality right now. I'd like to think he's resolved them, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy time right now. But Dave, before you go, I'd love for people to, connect with you. I'll put your links in the description below, but where can people connect with you?
I'm on Twitter at David B. Collum. It's about the only place. At some point, I'm going to be pushing a GoFundMe for a very close person to me who at 49 had a stroke.
Oh, geez.
And there's tons of people who have problems, right? There's just tons, and so the sort of the angle I'm taking is I've written thousands of pages and thousands of podcasts, and I've never asked for a penny. So I'm going to say, okay, think of this as a Patreon donation to me, and
Right.
so think of it as donating to me, not because for one thing, I'm going to be writing some big checks already,
Well,
and
when you do start it, let me know so we can
I
have
will.
so then we can get it to I'm confident we can get it to a really really big number with our audience. So absolutely, if that whenever you do start that if it's in the next couple of weeks or in the next month, come back on this channel and we will really get people behind it.
Right. Right. And even if it's just $5 a pop,
Yeah.
I'm just, and again, you don't know the guy. You know me though. So I'm saying,
Yeah.
think of it as a Patreon donation to me.
Yeah. No,
And,
absolutely.
if you can do that, then that works for me. And if
Yeah.
not, that's okay too.
Yeah, no, well,
So
you know what, Dave, I really appreciate you coming down. As always, like I said in the beginning, it's a breath of fresh air when you come down to our community. And I'd love to have you back on in the near future here.
whenever, just send me the email.
Awesome. Okay, talk to you soon, Dave.
Adios.